We now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night, at whatever time zone you're listening or picking up this broadcast or seeing this audio, video clips. We trust that it will be a blessing and an upliftment to your spirit. Our scripture marching orders are found in James chapter 5 and verse 4, which says simply, behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which of you is kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Those are our marching orders because we are concerned about the working man, the union man, the laboring man and woman who labor many times in our factories, many times in our restaurants, and are not properly or even sufficiently compensated. We have labored here in California to bring about the $15 an hour minimum wage, to get it increased at least to that level. And so we're thankful to God for his blessing in enabling at least a move to begin in that direction by the City Council of Los Angeles and also by the state of California. But we must end the fraud which takes place in people being underpaid for their work and for their labors that they do in our country. Amen. God knows most of us have been underpaid, and it's time for us to get our check, as Dr. King said. And we are therefore active in attempting to seek redress on those very issues. And that is one of the missions of our program, is to bring about that level of heightened awareness so that we all strike out, or we all speak up. And in speaking up, we bring about an improvement in the social condition of all of us and not just some of us. Because we've all heard that if you raise the minimum wage, then the economy is going to fall. And the economy hasn't fallen yet since the minimum wage was raised from 50 cents an hour. And thank God, at least it's now beginning to come up toward a full $15 an hour, although we haven't quite gotten there yet. But we trust that we shall reach that goal and that milestone. And we want to encourage you who are looking this way by YouTube and Facebook and whatever social media platform you may be using, to get involved. We can't just be reactive. We're going to have to become proactive. We need to begin to get ahead of the storms and the troubles, and like the eagle begin to fly above it. I'm also concerned, as I'm sure you have been likewise, with the many police shootings and the gang violence and domestic violence that occurs in too many of our cities and our neighborhoods and our communities. If we look at the list grows longer and longer. My God, when we first got busy, we were talking about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman, and how many have occurred since then. How much black blood has been spilled since that fateful day in Sanford, Florida. And still, our people are being shot down. That was Freddie Gray. That was Michael Brown. That was Oscar Grant. Most of you saw the movie about Oscar Grant, about him being shot by Mr. Officer Meserly there on the platform after he was handcuffed and laying on his stomach, complying with the officer, but still the officer shot him, and the officer only received 2 years. What a travesty. But thank God we did get a few wins. And then the killings of which we have been guilty of among ourselves. There was one case that really stuck out last year, and that was the death of little Autumn Johnson, which was a 1-year-old babe, had just celebrated her first birthday and was standing up in her crib, wasn't bothering nobody. She was in her room, in her crib, in her house, and her mother was in the kitchen getting her bottle ready when a bullet came through the house and killed that baby, shot her in the head and killed her. And I want to thank God that there have finally been some arrests this year. 4 suspects have finally been arrested and will be standing trial in that murder. Took a lot of police work, and we want to commend the police when they do that, which is right. And then who can forget poor little Tamir Rice, 12 years of age, born in 2002, and dead in 2014. What a shame. And the list goes on. His mother had set up a Tamir Rice Foundation in his honor and in his memory. And one of the things we come to find out was that we shot by 2 officers were involved. And as of yet, the conclusion of that case is not fully known. Now, Sandra Bland, down in Prairie View, Texas, arrested by an officer, Brian Encenia, and died 3 days later under mysterious circumstances in the custody of the Harris County Police Department. And they don't know as of yet. It was never fully determined how she died. But we do know that there's been a settlement in that case in order to end it. And then out here in Los Angeles, Sister Waukesha Wilson, mysterious death in the county jail, in the custody of the police, turns up dead in her cell by strangulation, and the sheriff's department or the police department can't tell you how she died, and yet they have 24-hour video surveillance on the jail cells at all times. And they make checks on a regular basis, but nobody saw her either attacked or with a paraphernalia or equipment sufficient to end her own life, and yet she showed up dead of strangulation. And so the family still is fighting to get some answers on that question. Brother Alton Sterling, which we all remember, was shot by Officer Howie Lake and Officer Blaine Salamone, and no charges were filed in that case. And so we do have a few that we can say we got a bit of vindication in, but not much. We got a long way to go. John Meserly only served 2 years for killing Oscar Grant. And you look at the list going back, Walter Scott was shot by Michael Slager. That was the case that you see on the Facebook where the guy jumped out of the car and started running away, and the police officer pursued him off camera. And if somebody hadn't been there with a cell phone, we never would have known what happened. But he shot the poor guy in the back. But at least he was convicted, and hopefully he will spend some time in jail. That officer's name is Michael Slager. I bring all of these issues up because of the fact that they are tied into how the poor and the working class are mistreated and how they are policed by those in power. Because of the fact that it appears that if you are working stiff, that you are not regarded as, your life is not regarded as being as valuable as others. And that's whether you're black or white. And it's these issues that cause us so much pain and so much grief. And I know they cause you pain and cause you grief as well. And so we continue to speak out against this type of injustice and this type of mistreatment of citizens by the hands of the police department, those that are sworn to protect and to serve. That's what's on the side of their police cars, as I understand it. But it appears that the only person that they are protecting and serving is that same 1% that is working to put forward that grievous tax reform measure that is working its way to the Congress of the United States of America. And believe me, we're in for a rough ride going forward. And we thank God that we have a chance or an opportunity to at least speak out on and against these type of issues. I see that one of my friends had walked in, and I'm glad to see him come in, Brother Andrew Williams. And why don't you say hello to the people, Brother Andrew?
Well, hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are in the world.
Wherever you are in the world, yes. And we trust that this time will find you doing well and persevering. There are so many of us that are involved in the social justice and social action arena, but yet we all need to be involved. And that's why I had asked my friend here, Brother Andrew, to come down and talk about some of the programs, some of the events, and to continue to apprise us of some of the things that they're doing at that 5-Star Youth Foundation. I know on our last broadcast, you had given us a list of some of the things that you were doing.
Yes, sir.
And you want to kind of reiterate what y'all doing in this month of December, heading up to our Christmas?
In honor of the conversation that I came into, and let me now speak to your audience, because actually I'm here representing the same topic that we were just discussing. Silky D. Williams, who's known as the first West Coast DJ on the West Coast and a entertainment director for the Universal Hip Hop Museum. She's actually our international ambassador for 5 Points Youth Foundation. She's also been very instrumental in having our location to be the site on the West Coast for the organizing committee for the Universal Hip Hop Museum to actually meet. More importantly, though, she's involved us with an organization up in San Francisco, and they're called the Hip Hop for Justice. That's hip hop and the number 4justice.org. I would ask everyone to go to your YouTube station and type in the murder of Mario Woods. Now, Mario Woods was a 26-year-old gentleman that was shot 20 times by the San Francisco Police Department just before the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. um, Brother Miles Muhammad in San Francisco, he was so upset that he could find on social media all the names that you mentioned, brother, all the names that you mentioned about our martyrs, but there was no mention of Mario Woods. Come to find out, one of those reasons is because it was, in fact, the Super Bowl. So what he did was he called up his good friend, James Baum, a Public Enemy, and he shared this with him. What they did was they got Chuck D involved, but also they got other entertainers involved because they found out that it's not that the entertainers didn't care, it's just that they didn't know. So what you might remember Beyonce in that halftime show that caused a lot of controversy because her dancers came up and they actually had a sign, Justice for Mario Woods. So that brings us back right again round to what you're saying. We have to stand up for social justice, and we have to be the ones to use our voice to speak out to the world against injustice, because injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Right, and our brothers and sisters whose voices are muted by death can no longer speak, but we who are alive and remain, as the scripture says, we are compelled not to hold our peace, but to speak up, stand up for justice, as Dr. King said, and stand up for righteousness, right where we are.
Yes. Right
where you are right now at this very moment. And truly, Brother Mario Woods' death causes great controversy and great pain, not only to the immediate family, but also to the larger community on the outside. Remember, my brothers and my sisters, that the late president, 16th president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, had a saying that it is the same old question, the same old struggle, the struggle between right and wrong that has occupied mankind since the beginning of time. It is a struggle between those who are in power and those who are subjected to the power. It is the right is the common right of humanity, and the wrong is the divine right of kings, as it is stated. At that time, Abraham Lincoln was fond of saying, it is the old adage, the old conflict that says, you work and earn bread and I'll eat it.
Well, that actually speaks on a lot of levels to what we're dealing with right now. One of the human rights, just after 1948, the world came together and decided, well, there are 30 human rights that everyone's entitled to, regardless of where you are on earth. We're all human beings. One of those rights is number 29, responsibility. So I do want to applaud your efforts to take the responsibility to speak for the voices, for those that have the voices of the unheard, the ones that have already passed away. So, as you know, Martin Luther King Day is coming up next year, and Mr. Adrian Dove is still championing that. The theme for 2018 is when they go low, we go high. Right. So I have to give you, again, applause, because what you're doing is actually going high by taking the road that's your responsibility, and you're standing up to do something about that. So I certainly do applaud you, sir.
All right. That sounds good. But the proof is in the eating. And if you are like me, you've heard so many great speeches and so much rhetoric, you can almost write a book your own self. But sadly, when we leave the rhetoric and look for those who have spoken to be with us, where the effort must be put forward, that is where there is a big, huge inconsistency. And that is an understatement to call it an inconsistency. But those are the things that we are struggling against as well. But yet we don't lose hope. We don't lose courage, because a lot of those that speak great swelling words don't show up at the protest or show up at the police commission meetings or show up at the city hall. We persevere. As I said, I think it was Abe Lincoln. I'm a student of Abe Lincoln. He said, you can't wait for unanimity. You have to grab the group that's going with you, that's working to make a change and be the change that you want to see. And a fine example of that, as I said on last week, is the current success of the most unqualified person that I, in my lifetime at least, have seen to be the President of the United States, and that is the President of Donald John Trump. And you can't see where he's qualified any other way than white privilege, 35 years of age and a male, and a citizen of the United States of America. So that has really, I think, opened up my eyes, if they were not already open. I guess after 8 years of having President Obama, and then to get this turkey, you can feel a huge letdown.
Well, I unfortunately, I think I've heard a lot of people thank Donald J. Trump for ripping off the hypocrisy of the American system that we're actually brought into, because the first founding fathers, as you know, they discounted us as human beings. So the chickens coming back home to roost is a statement that may have gotten some of our other earlier heroes actually killed. But it seems that the truth is in the pudding right now. But I have to ask you, from a responsibility standpoint, when the people at the lowest level have the lowest commitment to actually voting to make a difference, do you really believe there's going to be a difference this next go around?
The problem is the disconnect between the younger generation of young black teens who are becoming young adults to make the connection between where they are and the politics that put them there. Because once they see that connection, they will get up and go and vote. But we're going to have to show that connection, show that relationship. Why are we where we are as a society? Why do we live where we live as a society? I was speaking with Mr. Blackwell before the broadcast about the fact that there are many addresses that are showing up on the TV, streets and names that I didn't even know existed as a result of this fire.
All right.
And all of a sudden we see these people who are becoming what so many of us already are, homeless.
Yes.
And they're seemingly getting a taste of what many of us have been living for a long time, not because of anything that they did, but because of the fact of circumstances that have worked against them to bring about the situation that is extant right now out there where they live.
Right.
Keeping in mind that the flight to the suburbs was subsidized and financed by the FHA, HUD, and the VA.
Yes.
And it was one stipulation, that is that no black person, no colored person will be able to buy a home. Those homes were built by white people for the occupancy of white people.
Yes.
And that is why we live where we live now. Because just because you stop a practice and you don't repair the damage that was done by that practice,
right,
then the condition and the social situation continues to maintain. So we as black people who were disfranchised in throughout U.S. history, and who were brought here, of course, originally as slaves, our own government continued by de jure practice to disfranchise us. And so when we see us where we are now, we had to remember the politics that was practice and the policies that were set in place in order to bring about this current situation. So when people ask us, well, how come you haven't done better than what you have? And the people come from overseas and they're doing wonderful things. Well, we've had a lot going against us. Yes, we come a mighty long way, but we've had so much to overcome.
Yes. Well, let me also, the policies and procedures that you mentioned are very important. I happen to know, and I was just informed just recently again, in 1971, the United States Army conducted a study. They wanted to find out what drug would there cause to be the most radical disruption in the family. And they wanted to test it in the black community. And it was found out that crack cocaine actually is that drug. Now, you have to remember things like COINTELPRO. That's a coin that was used, or a phrase that was used when the FBI were adamantly trying to get agent provocateurs into the black community through the Black Panthers, through the SCLC, through civil rights organizations. But then you have to think about the Iran-Contra affair, where you have a governmental effort to fund a war,
an illegal war, by actually selling drugs for arms that were brought into Southern California, we're told, through Mr. Blanton and his relationship with Freeway Ricky Ross, who I just spoke with a couple of weeks ago, and Chico Brown, who were in effect the ones that opened the door to the crack cocaine epidemic that helped to decimate the South Central Los Angeles community, primarily where we are, and specifically the 1992 civil unrest. I see today people that are in their 60s and 70s that are still hooked to the same conditions that existed back in 1992. I noticed you didn't mention Ollie North. You can't shy away from his name.
Well, we had to leave room.
He was the front guy.
I had to leave room for you to bring him back up again, because now he's back up again in the public eye, because actually it's the Blackstone group, the Black there's an intelligence agency now that is charged with creating a separate spy division from the CIA, from the NSA. That was just recently in the news, and one of the leaders of this actually
is still working
for
Eric Prince.
Yes. So now we're talking about the same
Blackwater.
Yes, Blackwater. Yes. So Ollie North, Blackwater is also still part of the same fabric that we're working in.
Ronald Reagan was a Teflon president because he never let it touch him. He got away with it. He destroyed the people in his own country, and he got away with it. Huh?
Hollywood. A Hollywood story.
And why are we where we are, and why must we vote? That is a clear and present danger.
Yes.
Because they are constantly laboring to roll back all of the advances that we worked so hard to finally even begin to attain through the civil rights struggle and through all of the struggles prior to that, and even down to today. And we're still having to struggle for a seat at the table, to get more than crumbs, to get to the bakery, and to get to own the farm where the bread is being grown.
Which has never happened through the Democratic neoliberal organizations. Because, again, what we're looking at is, when you look at President Clinton, for example, that opened up the doors to NAFTA.
I guess our time is up. And we want to thank you for allowing us to share with you again on this day. And we want to encourage you to stay vigilant, stay woke. And remember, just because somebody looks like you does not mean that they like you. Until this time next week, thanks again for listening.
We are KTYMmedia.com, and there is a blessing in the message. We are here to edify, educate, and entertain you. We are the next generation in radio and video streaming. KTYMmedia.com. Take us with you everywhere you go, on your smartphone, tablet, iPad, anything with Wi-Fi capabilities. Take us to the beach. barbershop, beauty shop, or butcher shop, we're everywhere now. Share this with your neighbors and your friends. KTYM Media.com